Good evening, everyone. We'll be starting in just a couple of minutes. The YouTube has already started streaming, so we should be good to go. Thanks. Good evening, everyone. We'll be starting in just a couple of minutes. The YouTube has already started streaming, so we should be good to go. Thanks. Good evening, everyone. We'll be starting in just a couple of minutes. The YouTube has already started streaming, so we should be good to go. Thanks. Good evening, everyone. We'll be starting in just a couple of minutes. The YouTube has already started streaming, so we should be good to go. Thanks. Good evening, everyone. We'll be starting in just a couple of minutes. The YouTube has already started streaming, so we should be good to go. Thanks. Good evening, everyone. We'll be starting in just a couple of minutes. The YouTube has already started streaming, so we should be good to go. Thanks. Good evening, everyone. We'll be starting in just a couple of minutes. The YouTube has already started streaming, so we should be good to go.
Now, see if it still works. Say something.
Hello. We're almost ready to go. If the speakers could take their seats, we'll be launching in just about a minute. Thank you.
Hey, looks like you went home and shaved. You look pretty good. You didn't look so good this afternoon.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Lauren. How are you? Good to see you. Hi. How are you? All right, we're beginning. If Lorna can take her seat, I think we'll get started. Okay. I think you guys will be starting, so if you I'll just say right away. Okay, I think after Lorna sits, we'll be in. We're streaming now live, so we've got a few viewers on the stream as well. So it's on the Poolesville, town of Poolesville's website. So, and we record it, so you'll be able to see it afterwards. Thank you for coming this evening. Welcome. This is the first of a series of debates that the Poolesville Area Chamber of Commerce and the Fair Access Committee, which is a committee of the town of Poolesville, have scheduled. This one is the District 2 candidates. District 2, as you know, is the new district that we're in now. I think it's a great district in many ways because it's much more shaped like the Ag Reserve, pretty much, and that doesn't go all the way down to Bethesda and that kind of thing. As good as Andrew Friedson has been, I think this is a great move for us to have a district like this. These candidates are going to vie to represent us. We have two more debates. May 22nd, it's going to be out on Wayland Commons. That's the county executive candidates, and that's the same time, 6 to 7:30. And then we've got one on the 23rd of June. That's the at-large candidates. So please make it, if you can, show up for those as well. The one in Wayland Commons should be really fun because you can just bring your lawn chair and sit and listen, so it should be nice. So let's go ahead and start, but before I do, I have a quick welcoming remarks from the Poolesville Chamber of Commerce Chairman, Tom Kettler, who's here tonight, and then Jim Brown, who's the president of our commission. Tom? You want to use Dan's microphone, you wouldn't mind? So they can hear you on the YouTube too? There you go.
There we go. Yeah, good evening. I'm Tom Kettler. I'm the president of the Poolesville Area Chamber of Commerce, and we're delighted to co-sponsor tonight's debate for District 2 candidates. We thank all the candidates for coming out tonight. Our chamber has been in existence since 1979. We have 136 members right now, and our membership has actually been building back up again after COVID. And we're excited that we have a new district for our area. As Link mentioned, the old district, as you all know, went from Bethesda all the way up basically to Frederick, and it was, Poolesville and this Poolesville area, we didn't feel like we got maybe the representation we needed, so we're happy to have that new district created. And we've got some upcoming events too that I've got a sheet of paper on the back table, so be sure to grab one on the way out because we've been busy with lots of activities going on. We had a big opening last night at the Land Made, which is our new brewery outside of town, and we had a big turnout from the Gaithersburg Chamber and the Poolesville Chamber. So again, thank you all for coming out, and enjoy the debate.
Thank you, Tom. Jim, do you want to?
Steal my microphone already. He knows me. Good job. You guys, everybody, thank you for being here today. The first of Link said, a series of forums where we are trying to bring the candidates to you, Poolesville, wherever you are, online, Zoom, YouTube, here in the room. We really appreciate all you guys coming. We appreciate you all being here, and we appreciate your visits that have already come before today. It shows you're learning. I know you're trying hard. I just feel confident that all of you guys could be successful District 2 council members. And I have to tell you, though, that I was actually drafted by nobody. So you don't have to worry about that. We're not, no part of that from my office. We're super happy that the audience is here, everybody that's online. We know we're going to have a friendly conversation. Poolesville is a friendly place to be. You guys have all been briefed on the things, the issues that we have going on. And I'm confident, I appreciate the personal time you spent with all of us already. So let the fun begin, and thank you for being here, and welcome to Poolesville again. And we hope that we can't wait till one of you all starts serving us, because we're going to start twisting your wrist and helping you do things for us. So thank you. Appreciate it. Might as well say it up front.
Thanks. So you already know how the microphones work. When you want to speak, just press the button, and when you're done, please shut it off so the other speakers can respond. The way this is going to work tonight is we're going to have questions, obviously, from me for a while, but I've also got questions from the audience. I already got one. If you have one, there are two people here. Will be Ed is one, and Jeff is over there. If you have a question, they'll hand a card to you and write it out and bring it up to me. So that'd be good. Here's how we're going to start. We're going to have each of you in the first 2 minutes say a little bit about who you are, but more importantly, why I am the best candidate for Montgomery County's future, and more particularly for the Western County and its residents. Then we'll go on for some questions. Each candidate will have a minute to answer each question, and our faithful timer there, Tom Kettler, will have a time, and it actually has a stop sign. I hope it's pretty obvious when you are supposed to stop. 30 seconds. Yeah. If someone in the discussion mentions another candidate, either criticizes their position or says I don't like their position or references them, if you want 30 seconds to rebut, let me know so you can do that. Other than that, we'll just keep going on after you answer the question. In the final 2 minutes, we'll have each of the candidates kind of sum up and basically say what you think the key challenges are and I'll say this again, for the county and for the Western County. So that's it. So the first question, and even though Jim, and he's usually this way, was nice and said we're a nice town, we are upset about a few things. And one thing we're upset about is White's Ferry being closed now for almost a year and a half. And to be fair, there's been some things that have been done, but it's not open yet, and we don't know what the status is or what's going to happen going forward. So we would like to know, what do you think could be done to get White's Ferry open as soon as possible? Oh, okay. I'll like. See, that's how mad we are about this issue. But now you have some chance to think about it, so that's not fair either. I wanted to kind of throw it at you, but okay. Yeah, go ahead and make your 2-minute comments. I'm sorry about that. Go ahead, Lauren. You start. No, we can go the opposite direction. That's fair. We'll go back and forth if that's okay.
These things are important. Good afternoon, or good evening. It's a pleasure to be here this evening with you, and I am happy to share a little bit about myself. My name is Lorna Phillips Ford. I am a 35-year resident of Germantown. I've raised both of my daughters who went through Montgomery County Public Schools, graduating from Clarksburg High School, and I'm a small business owner, and I am a very very active community advocate. Now, you asked what makes me best? So I came up with a BEST analysis, B-E-S-T. The B stands for the fact that I have a professional business background and I'm a small business owner, which will enable me to understand very well the complexities of a budget, especially a $6 billion budget. Not only will I understand it, I'll be able to analyze it. And I also will have a sensitivity to small business owners and some of the pain you have felt during this pandemic and beyond, and address the issues that will help you to turn the corner and start to thrive. And then for E, that stands for education. I was brought to this area by IBM as a senior financial analyst from New York, and they knew that I had the skills to do the job for their company. I have a master's in business administration, and that's in finance. And I have certifications in contract management and contract law, oh my gosh, from FIT and Harvard, and I can analyze budgets. I said that. I'm a service advocate. I have served for many, many years, touching on many, many issues using local, state, and federal partners. Ike Leggett even gave me the Montgomery Serves Award because of my leadership and my ability to make an impact in the community for the things that I'm trying to do for residents. And then I just want to say I have the time. I've been here longer than probably anybody on this thing, and I have a vested interest.
Thank you. Marilyn?
I think that was for her, right? The clapping.
I'll take it.
Okay. Hi, my name's Marilyn Balcom, and I live in Germantown. I've been there for almost 30 years. My daughter was born and raised there, and grew up through MCPS and graduated from Northwest High School. I run the Gaithersburg Germantown Chamber of Commerce. I've been there for the past 16 years. We've partnered with the Poolesville Chamber throughout the years. I started my career as an accountant, and I'm also an organizational psychologist, so I too understand budgets, and I certainly understand large, complex organizations. And I am a strong community advocate. I was the founding president of my homeowners association, the PTA, cross-country mom, and grew up through Montgomery County and Germantown. I'm the past chair of Committee for Montgomery, program chair of Committee of Leadership Montgomery, and I vice chair of FutureLink, which helps first-generation college students navigate through their system. I also had the great fortune of being the executive director at Black Rock Center for the Arts during the construction of the building in the first year of operations. Throughout the past 27 years, I can't count the number of projects, partnerships, initiatives that I've been part of, large and small. I'm a strong, respected leader with a long history of getting things done for Montgomery County. Former County Executive Ike Leggett just endorsed me yesterday as a great community servant. As for representing the western part of the county, I have made a career in Montgomery County as an advocate for the entire county. The work colleagues throughout the county know where I live because I advocate for the Up County every single chance I get. I always advocate for more resources, more representation in the Up County. I understand the struggle of not having representation being in Germantown. I understand that it's difficult to have your voice heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. William?
All righty. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm William Roberts. I'm a husband, father, community advocate, and also a fierce advocate for the Up County. That's why I'm in this race. I live in Clarksburg with my wife, Michelle, and my daughter, Mackenzie, who is 3, sort of at the beginning of the MCPS pipeline, but even still, I'm a PTA dad because I wanted to get involved early. I've spent my career serving. So I'm a civil rights attorney by training, went to Howard University and Howard Law, and I started my legal career representing low-income tenants in fair housing cases. I then went to Capitol Hill to work for Congressman Jamie Raskin as his legislative director and his chief policy advisor. And in that role, worked on a number of issues, including helping to bring home some federal dollars to Montgomery County so we can keep the budget understanding rolling down the hill here. I love our county and I love the Up County. It's where I'm decided to raise my family, and all my work throughout the county I've only represented the interests of everyday people. I haven't, stood before the county council representing the interests of wealthy folks or developers, et cetera, represent the interests of my community. And so that's why I'm sitting before you to run today. I also serve on the board of the Black Rock Center for the Arts. I chair an organization called the Renters Alliance, which does renter outreach and tenant advocacy, and I'm a member of the Manna Food Center Advocacy Task Force. And so I've been involved in the civic, political, nonprofit life of the Up County, and spent years out front on our issues. And so the reason why I think I'm the best person to represent us here is because I know from all of my background, including chairing the Up County Citizens Advisory Board, that we need somebody who's going to be focused on the future of the Up County, somebody who's going to be focused on how we improve our economy and make sure communities are recovering from COVID, how we're investing in a lifetime continuum of education in our schools, how we're protecting and preserving the ag reserve and fighting climate change, and how we are mastering sort of the multimodal transportation solutions we need that fit our communities. And so I want to work on all that, and I look forward to talking about it a little bit more. Thanks.
Thank you, William. Dan?
Oh, good evening, everybody. My name is Dan Kuda. I married into a Montgomery County family that moved here, settled here in the 1960s. I got here in the 1980s in the middle of a Air Force career. I had come out of the Air Force Academy and took a job here at the Pentagon after being a C-130 pilot. Spent my time working with the Pentagon budget of about $600 billion. So I've worked in some of the budget areas and tried to understand the complexities of government. I went on to study at George Mason University across the river, and I'm a adjunct professor there now after getting a PhD about 10 years ago. I teach in public administration. The reason what got me into it is a little bit, I'm the outsider here, a little bit of the looking at the county from the outside. I've had 35 years as a commuter, driving from North Potomac out to Northern Virginia to work. I will tell you about an early commuter job I used to have when the kids, and I'm a father of three and a new grandfather also, but when the kids were young and couldn't sleep, we used to come out Route 28 from North Potomac, drive out to Poolsville to let them fall asleep in the back. So this is not my first time to Poolsville. But I will say, as an outsider, and to perhaps use a flying analogy, we're losing altitude in Montgomery County. We've got an in-flight problem, and the issues are large, and my potential focus is to say that, or my main focus is that everything in Montgomery County gets better when we have a growing local job base. That's fundamental to all of our other problems, and that's what I really want to focus on. I certainly have views on White's Ferry and look forward to talking about that, but that's really my focus right now, an outsider view. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we get started, I wanted to make sure that I acknowledge, too, that we have some Poolville commissioners here tonight. Aside from Jim, we have Jeff Ack here. We have Ed Reed is in the back. We have Martin Radigan in the back. And a former commissioner, Valerie Dickerson, is here. So thank you for being here tonight. And I hope you don't mean by that anecdote, Dan, that this is a sleepy little town, because it's not. All right, so let's go with that first question again. You heard it, it's about White's Ferry, and we really would like to hear some specific ideas, if you have any, about how we could break this logjam and get the ferry operating again. So we'll start this time from right to left. Dan, you want to start?
I studied the court transcript last night, and I came away a little perplexed because it's a difficult issue. You know, the fact that it's gone on for a year now tells you that it's not a simple solution. We've got basically, my analysis of it says, we've got a dispute between two private parties, one in Maryland, one in Virginia, and my first reaction is that that's the level we want to keep it at. That if anything I could do as a District 2 commissioner could help mediate that with Loudoun County commissioners and help the parties get together and work, I think that preserves the historic tenor of White's Ferry as a small cross-state transit operation. And I wouldn't want to see us get into the larger issues of eminent domain and perhaps even threaten basically agricultural reserve with another crossing, because I think if we expand the issues too much, that's a danger that could happen. I want to keep White's Ferry like it was.
William?
Sure. So I take a little bit of a different view. I think that the Whites Ferry crossing isn't just a dispute between two private landowners. It is a dispute between two private landowners that spilled out into public infrastructure, right? We're talking about a crossing where hundreds of people were crossing every day, millions of dollars in economic impact on both sides of the river. And so I know, and I see Delegate Lily Shee here. Hey, Lily. Our District 15 delegation has been working really hard along with the county and the folks in Loudoun County to try to come to some agreement. One of the things that I would propose that we do is, or ask, that we do is make sure that we're involving US DOT, right? This is a regional, although it's a local crossing, it's a regional impact for it not being open. So I think, trying to involve the U.S. Department of Transportation as well as bringing in our federal delegation more to see if there's some way, they've brought back earmarks now on the Hill, right, to see if there's some way that we can bring all sides to the table together to really close the logjam. I think we shouldn't allow the private dispute between those two parties to continue to hurt communities on both sides of the river, but especially over here.
Thank you. Marilyn?
Yes, thank you. So we all agree that it's been crippling to Poolesville. It's really, the main street of Poolesville has been greatly impacted. And while it is a dispute between two private entities, I think that the county and the state have to play, the Montgomery County and the state of Maryland have to play into it. While we may not have any formal negotiation power, we do have a political power. And I think that if we can get governor to governor, a commissioner to county executive to put political pressure on it. But I think that Montgomery County can also look at whether we can leverage with the landowner. Can we offer payment, a number of 50 cents a car, $1 a car, something like that? This is a transit operation. I think one of the problems is there's a perception outside of the Up County that the ferry is a quaint entertainment asset. It's not. Thank you. That went by so fast.
Thank you. Lorna?
Well, we all know the history about Whites Ferry, and depending upon what you read, that's the tenor that you get from this. But I think that there's been a lot of finger pointing going on both sides, and we know it's more than the Hatfield and McCoy's type of dispute. This is something that's disrupting a vital artery of transportation from one side to the other. It's impacting businesses on both sides. And what I would recommend that we do is get all of the transit authorities and transit administrations, transportation administrations involved, and have a conversation with them, whether it's public-private, or private only. Who's had a conversation about what some of the options are, and bring in the landowners, the private citizens, and make sure that we're having this conversation so that they can better understand what some of the options are. And then if you have to go beyond that, then you go to the governor and all. But try to have a conversation right here.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll go this direction this time, from you, Lorna, first. A recent county health department report found that out of 26 zip codes, Poolesville ranked dead last overall regarding health outcomes. There are a number of aspects of that study but overall that's what it said. The previous public health officer suggested that some of this can be attributed to the difficulty of getting people in the ag reserve to specialists, most of whom are down county. In fact, we only have 2 doctors up here in the entire ag reserve. What would you do about this situation?
Well, I think we need to tackle it from a couple of different fronts. I mean, we chose to preserve the ag reserve, so we chose to have this rural environment, and because we chose to do that doesn't mean that we should be there should be a detrimental impact to the residents that live in this community. So I think what we need to do is look at the transportation. I looked at the bus schedule, and the prime time that's available when most people go for doctor's office visits is non-existent. I mean, so you're telling me that the only people that use the bus are the people who go to work and stay 8 hours and then, come back later? No, there are many people in the community that still need why don't we expand the bus service? Let it be all day. It's only one bus. Let it be all day. And then look at the vans. Montgomery County has two vans right now. They are earmarked for different types of communities, but let's expand the scope of the mobile medical vans so that we can get the services right here to the people when they're needed. And then I think we need to create a pipeline for folk who want to work in the medical field in rural communities.
Thank you. Marilyn?
Sure. So I think this is another issue of perception. Because of the perceived demographics of Poolesville, people outside of the area don't recognize that this is a real problem. And if these health outcomes were anywhere else in the county, they would be addressed immediately. We need to have action on these health outcomes. I think the issue of my understanding is the catchment area for calling a ride Poolesville is just outside that area. We need to change that. That could be a simple change, and the county executive, county council could do that, and I think that needs to happen. We also need a clinic. I think that it's intriguing to look at the telehealth options. A staffed telehealth options, I think, is another issue, and we also need to just make sure that we can get people from point A to point B in terms of transportation. Thank you.
Thank you. William?
Sure. So agree with a lot that's been said. Actually, I think we definitely need a Western County Health Center stat. I think that in addition to looking at how we change ride-on routes to provide more ride-on transportation here, we could look at, sort of the last mile. The county is piloting all around the county these last mile transportation services, these short-running ride-on services. You could pilot one that's not so last mile, but that comes up here, right, in different times of day to be able to bring people down to Germantown, Rockville, Gaithersburg, where a lot of medical facilities are housed. I think that we need to be looking at the county just really invested in the Dennis Avenue facility, right, which is great for down county, but we need to be doing that up county as well. Agree with the telehealth idea. I also think we should be, looking at how we're partnering with the area medical schools, particularly for folks, who are who are interested in community health models and rural health care, as Lorna said. And so I think those are some of the things that we can do, including, continuing to support some of the local organizations that are providing some health care here.
Thank you. Dan?
Well, this is a great question and a lot of great suggestions already from the panel. I do think that I'd like to know a little more data behind the health outcomes. I mean, is this an issue of older people, or is it socioeconomic? All of these things I think are relevant to this. Transportation would certainly seem to be an important element, and like Will talked about, that last mile issue that prevents the half-mile walk to the bus to get access. I think those kind of things need to be solved all over the county, and particularly when we see an equity issue like this, we need to be creative about the transportation steps that would allow people to get access to health care in the rest of the county, to include possibly bringing clinics out here and telehealth like Marilyn talked about. So thanks very much.
We've gotten several questions from the audience that have to do with the Ag Reserve. Poolesville is right in the middle of the Ag Reserve, and the residents of the Poolesville have consistently said they want to maintain a rural character in our town and the area around it. So protecting the Ag Reserve is critical, and most of these questions relate to that, but they also relate to some actions that the County Council have taken, particularly allowing solar panels in the Ag Reserve. And the second thing is the TDRs. I don't know if you know about the TDRs, but how that process works has been undermined by some. And the new Thrive 2050 plan, some people believe has too much development too close to the Ag Reserve that might spill over. At least some people have made comments along those lines. What are your thoughts about protecting the Ag Reserve? Dan, with you first.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Thrive 2050. It's an important, hugely important issue to the whole county. And it's the kind
and
of
Dan, I should have said, it's the new master plan that
Certainly.
county's drafting for the next 50 years.
Certainly,
So.
and it needs to be put in front of the voters and people to look at it and think about the future of the county. and to think about how the agricultural reserve fits into the future of the county. I don't think there's any reason why we want to disturb that, although I will tell you, when we first moved out here, our first house on right off Route 28, we felt like we were right on the rural suburban line. That's changed a lot since we were there. We always enjoyed this trip out west into the ag reserve, and I'd look forward to doing that in the future for all my grandkids. The main thing is, I think the planning idea that the ag reserve needs to certainly be embedded in Thrive 2050 and preserved in that, and not be carved out and removed. So that's certainly where I feel about it. Thank you.
William?
Yeah, so, if I'm representing you on the council next year, one of my chief jobs will be to help protect, preserve, sustain the ag reserve. So that means making sure that the county and my colleagues on the county council, when they're lobbing up zoning text amendments or, other zoning changes, aren't trying to encroach on the protection of the ag reserve. It has to be something that is sacrosanct for us. I think, with Thrive, certainly one of the areas of improvement in Thrive that we have yet to see is how they are going to incorporate what rural life looks like in the county, right? Thrive is a document that's a good foundation, has the ideas about 15-minute living, and et cetera, which work really well for denser areas, but it doesn't talk about what 15-minute living might look like for our rural communities, right? What do those transit connections look like? And particularly, it doesn't talk about what it means to infill some infrastructure, right? We talked about the medical infrastructure, things like grocery stores, community centers that we don't have across the western part of the county that Thrive doesn't sort of think about as we're talking about a county in 2050. And so I would want to see that more incorporated in Thrive.
Marilyn?
Yeah, I support the protection of the ag reserve, and I don't think that, I don't see Thrive threatening the ag reserve. I think that it's very clearly looking at additional housing in the urban core. I've testified a number of times on Thrive, and my primary testimony is it's not a general plan for the entire county. If it were called Thrive 2050 for the urban core, that would make sense, but it doesn't represent the suburban communities of Clarksburg and Germantown, and it certainly doesn't represent the ag reserve. So I don't think that it's a general plan for everyone. In terms of protecting the ag reserve, one of the key issues is that we have to make sure that our farms are viable. Farming is a business, and part of the protection of the ag reserve is to make sure that we have viable farms. So I think it's important to work with our farming community to make sure that that happens, and we need to make sure that that we're looking at all environmental aspects of the ag reserve. Thank you.
Lorna?
I agree with, excuse me, I agree with everyone regarding preservation of the ag reserve being one of my primary focus areas. I mean, it's been protected for 70 years, and we should continue to do so. I do think that there are areas where we can add to the effectiveness of the ag reserve. We can develop programs for women in the BIPOC community. We can create high school to college pathways for agricultural science so that we're always having a pipeline. We can offer more expansive table crop offerings, because right now the offerings that come off of the ag reserve are primarily for feed. And the food insecurity issue in this country and around the world is going to get worse before it gets better. And I think that's an area where we can probably do some expanding. And then we need to look at the resources that folks on the ag reserve have. You know, the broadband is crazy, the bike paths. I got stuck. I couldn't even take my car across the area because I would have gone into the stream. So there are just a lot of simple services that need to be addressed on the ag reserve. Sorry.
Thank you. One of the things that we have been doing in Poolesville is trying to change the dynamics when it comes to how the county and the state treats us, and you have touched on this a little bit. The Fair Access Committee was created by the town for that reason, to try to get equity and services out here. William, you specifically referenced that in your comments. How would you define equity when it comes to treating the ag reserve, the area in Poolesville and the area around the Western County? You've touched on it, but are you get specific ideas on that you think would make more equitable treatment of our area a reality? And on this one, because I think it is so important, if you each have 2 minutes to answer that, specific ideas you can think of that would increase the equity out here.
I don't know that I fully understand the question. Can
So
you
I'm
repeat?
talking about the fact that we don't have a community center, for example. We don't get investments in county services. We just talked about healthcare. How do we get more equity in the services that other parts of the county have?
And it's my turn again. What we have to get around here in this particular community is the density ratios that the county council and most government folks and planners use to determine the services that certain communities can get. Like I mentioned earlier, just because we've chosen to have the density that we have doesn't mean that we should be disproportionately impacted by the lack of services. So what we have to do is find other ways, because it's never going to change. We're going to have the ag reserve. We're going to try to always preserve the ag reserve, and that means that we won't have as many people here as areas down county where they can get more of the services. We will need to just look at other options to get the wellness center that's needed, to get the community center that's wanted, to make sure we have the mental health resources for adults and children. I mean, the children here, they're outperforming kids all over this county, and have a 100-year-old school and fighting to get a gym that accommodates them, and fighting to get, a center that will address their mental health needs. So I think it's an intentional effort to make sure that the issues that are addressing this community are met. I mean, I think from where I'm sitting, if you continue to do things the same way, if you continue to rely on the same groups of people, you're going to get the same results. So here's an opportunity for you to look outside the box and look at individuals who have trusted and proven success in trying to get things done. I, as an African American woman, I know all about disparities, and I know the challenges of trying to overcome those disparities. So you can count on my track record and my personal experience to fight for those issues, even when others might say, oh, they don't deserve to have services because they want to be a rural community.
Thank you. And it was just mentioned, I mean, it's probably a good idea that we should probably vary who goes first instead of going back and forth like that. So next time I'll do that. I do learn from this process. So. Marilyn?
Sure. So I think in terms of how to get what you deserve, what we deserve, I think the Fair Access Committee has been brilliant in terms of really raising the voice and raising the information. I think one of the things that you did very early on at Poolsville Day is to invite all the candidates to come and to hear a very clear, laid out reason for why everyone needs to pay attention to Poolsville. So I think that was an excellent start. I think I go back to the perception issue. People don't see Poolsville as a community in need. If you look at the demographics, the overall demographics, it's a relatively higher socioeconomic level, and you don't see the pockets of need, and you don't see the immigrant communities working, the itinerant workers at the farms that are really in need of service, or the elderly seniors who are low income. And so there's a perception that this is not a community in need, and I think that raising that voice and really telling the story is imperative. So it comes down to a marketing, PR exercise in one regard, and basically having data and having the statistics to share with the rest of the community. I also think while some people aren't happy about the county redistricting, one of the you'll only have one representative on the council, but having Councilmember Andrew Friedson, who's been up here for the past 4 years, he will never forget your needs. And so now there will only be 2 people who are fighting for you. Always remember that the 4 at-large council members are your council members, and that's another aspect of bringing them in here and demanding services. Thank you.
Good point. William?
Sure. So agree with what's been said thus far. I'll add that the focus on the issues in Poolsville that we need to get from the county has not been happening organically, right? There's a reason that you all had to stand up a Fair Access Committee to fight for those things in the first place, which you shouldn't have. You had those 4 at-large council members and a district council member who should have been voicing your needs and concerns with this county executive in the last. And so I think what you're going to need, number one, is a representative in District 2 next year who's going to be able to build those partnerships with the brand-new council, which most of the council will be brand new. A lot of our new colleagues on the council, my new colleagues, haven't been up to Poolsville, right? If you're running in District 7 or District 5, what have you. And so you need somebody in the seat who has those relationships with those people to build the coalitions and tell the story of Poolsville and of the Western County about what we have here and what we don't, about what our opportunities are and what our challenges have been, and how, we haven't been able to get over that hurdle. And so I think the model that Fair Access put together, right, when bringing together the data, bringing people in, is one that works. But you need a partner on this next county council who is going to be able to do that, but also who, I agree with what Lorna said before, need somebody who's got a fresh perspective on these issues. I happen to think that person is me, who can build on some experience that I have in various aspects of working in the community, working up and down levels of government to be able to bring those resources here. So I think it takes building those partnerships organically. It takes building on what you all have already done, and I think it takes consistent push. Unfortunately, we're a huge county that's got a lot of needs, right? And so what you all proved with Fair Access is that you had to keep knocking on the door, right? And so I want to be the council member that's going to keep pushing on that door with you and help you to open it. In terms of equity and how you refocus, equity issues in the Up-County, I think certainly both from a racial and socioeconomic standpoint, but also from looking at how the county inequitably treats our rural areas versus our urban areas, I think is a part of the conversation that we need to be having at the council.
Dan, thank you.
Well, in some ways, fair access and just the very addition of these new districts out here in the western part of the county basically tell us something about the pattern of what's been going on in the county for many, many decades. The fair access had to form to basically try to overcome issues that had been going on and were institutional in county government for a long, long time. That's where I talk about, I'm coming at this from the outside group, and that a new voice, a fresh voice for Poolsville and for really the district, the new opportunity we're getting here is really a chance to redress some of these issues that we've started to see. We know that the county has been having larger problems, fair access being just a symptom of a larger issue that we're dealing in. And we need to basically, to go back to the technocratic side of it, we need the metrics that can recognize the nature of a rural area like Poolsville and get it what it deserves in terms of its rural character. And I think that we've seen the patterns of the last 40 or 50 years basically in the county have hardened, and you're seeing that the result here in Poolsville, and I commend you for the Fair Access Committee on that.
Thank you. There's another interesting audience question, and I spent a long time in my career in Congress, so I think this is a fair question, even though it may cause more debate, which is probably good. I said we want that. One of the questions from the audience was, do you have a specific concern or issue with another of these candidates' positions on a particular issue that has to do with the Western County or Poolsville, or the county more generally? In other words, do you not like something that or you opposed to something they're proposing? So let's start with William and go left. So he has some time to, and then go back to Dan, the last one. So to your right then from there.
So do I not like something that someone else is proposing? So I have a pretty good view of what, folks' platforms are up here. I haven't spent as much time analyzing them as I have studying the issues that I would, working on the council. I don't see myself in this race, and this is not just me being Poolsville nice today, but I don't see myself in this race as, opposing any one of these folks up here. I think there are areas, right, where we possibly diverge, where we would attack a policy area in a different light. the only thing I would say is that one of the key takeaways that I want you to have tonight about me is that, again, in my background, I've been an advocate in the community and in the county across a whole host of issues, but always for members of the community. So I've never stood before the county council and opposed policies that would, sort of be harmful to working people in the county. I've been on the side of communities in the county, and that's the kind of community leader that I want to be. I think having worked on Capitol Hill for Congressman Raskin, somebody who is a whiz at constituent service, I got a crash course in constituent service, and this job is really important. Your district council members are the ones who have to be on the ground with you, being a constituent servant. I think I could do that better than folks up here. So maybe that's one thing.
Thank you. Marilyn?
So that's a difficult question, of course. I think that you are blessed with 4 great candidates. Of course, we're all smart and we're all engaged in our community, and it's a tough decision. You're going to have to decide whether each one of us tells you what we can do. You're going to have to decide whether we can do it, right? I can, and I have. My track record speaks for itself. I have been actively engaged in this community for a long time. As for constituent service, I run a chamber of commerce. My phone rings all day long, and I'm answering. So not only from my members, 450 members, but I get I get calls from the community. I get calls from out of state. I get calls from everywhere. So I do constituent service in my job every day and have for 16 years. So I think that the onus is on you to get to know us and make that tough choice. Thank you.
Lorna?
Wow, I thought this was a nice community.
If it was just me asking the questions, but the audience has their own views on things. So.
Yeah. For all the reasons stated already, I just think that we are in this race to make sure that we can serve, that we will serve, and the question that you all have to answer is who has the background, who has the proven and demonstrated ability to do what they say that they're going to do. You need to research that. I have fought, I have won, I have delivered results, and I would do that for you all in this community. For me, it's all about equity. No matter what it looks like, how dense the population, it's all about equity. Everyone in the community should be able to thrive, and that's what I'll do.
Thank you. And on this question, we'll start with Marilyn and go right, or her left, my right.
Yeah, let's do Dan.
Oh, sorry, Dan. This is why I like my original. It's a lot easier for me to follow it that way. This way it's not. So, go ahead, Dan. Sorry about that.
Lorna, there was something about the way you said that. Let's do Dan. No, I do think, and I've listened to the debates, for example, of the county executive candidates, and recognize that the data suggests that the alarm bells are ringing from Montgomery County, that there's a larger problem that has been emerging in the last 15, 20 years, that slowly we're losing altitude, if you will, to go back to my flying analogy. I think the recognition is that there needs to be change, and it has to start with our underlying economy. It remains something that all of the leadership in the county recognizes, but I think there's just other priorities going on that I think we need to get back to the basic. In a growing economy, starting out here in the western part of the county and extending through the entire county, is just a voice just a message we've got to emphasize. So,
Thank you, and we'll start with Marilyn going that way. This Poolsville has a big celebration called Poolsville Day, and one of the main parts of that, one of the interesting parts of that, is a real focus on electric vehicles. And the town itself has done a lot on environmental issues, including it's got its own solar farm to help power its sewer plant. So one of the questions from the audience was at a forum last month, and I don't know if this is true, but I'm sure they're quoting accurately. One of the candidates for county executive said that his main action on climate would be to plant 10,000 trees. which would only increase the county's tree cover by 0.02%. What would you do that would be significant on climate change, and how important an issue do you think it is? Marilyn?
Yeah, I think it's a really important issue. It was just endorsed by the Sierra Club this week. So we have a climate action plan. We need to look at that. I mean, there's a lot of big wish list. We need to we need to make an action plan from the action plan. So I think there's low-hanging fruit. I think that we need to look at our waste, curbside composting. I think that other jurisdictions have done that very well. We need to look at that. We need to have look at our buildings. Our buildings produce a lot of wasted energy, working with the building industry to make sure that our buildings become more and more energy efficient. I like the concept of pay to throw in terms of reducing waste. You get X amount of, you get a bag of waste each week, and if you go over it, you pay to throw. I think that's a really interesting concept, and the list is very long. To each week, and if you go
William?
over it, you pay to throw. I think that's a really interesting concept, and the list is very long. To each week, and if you go
I have my technology guru here. I hit a button by mistake.
Okay. No worries. And I've caught my sticker. Definitely agree with that. I do think the county's climate plan is ambitious, and it's a question of how we're going to achieve it and by when, right? And I think that, the fight against climate change is both about mitigation and preventing some of the damage that's already done, but also figuring out what innovations that we can do on the ground level here in the county. And it's really tied to the life of the ag reserve, right? We talked about how to protect and preserve the ag reserve. If we don't do the things that we got to do to tackle climate change in the county, it's going to have a deleterious effect on the ag reserve and on our community. So certainly, agree with what's been said. Figuring out how, as a county, we can cut down on greenhouse gas emissions, how we can green our fleet. Very much agree with green development. As we're moving forward, not just in the Up County, but all over the county, and looking at how we can take advantage of all of the county properties and county-owned properties that need to be brought up to the standards of our climate plan, because I think that's where the county can start, with what it owns.
Dan?
Well, I think climate change has been largely right now confined to a top-down directed effort, top-down from government. And I think if there really is going to be a change, it's going to start with people making their own decisions in their life, and governments providing the information to tell people the impact of their life and their lifestyle, and helping them recognize what they can do on their own to make a difference. I think too long there's been climate goals that have been held at the top level of government and not really shared, or really not talked about the full impact with the people in the community. And I think government needs to be upfront and talk about really the significance of this, that the changes that are being talked about are huge, and they have enormous costs that I don't think are really being shared yet. I think government needs to be upfront and help educate and share and identify what the costs are going to be.
Lorna?
Well, I think the Climate Action Plan is a good framework, as has been stated, but what is missing are some measurements. So if I were to be elected, that's the first thing I would look at. You can't have a plan and don't know where you're going. We need to know how we're measuring it, and if we're even moving the needle in the direction that we need to go. So that would be one of the first things I would do. I also think we need to create a robust marketing and education campaign, so that all the residents in the community realize what's going on with the climate goals, so that we can address some of the inequities when it comes to sharing information. I would support funding to help small businesses to transition to some of the plans that the smart climate goals that are in the plan, because it's not always easy when you have small businesses. I would incorporate global warming as a key component of the Climate Action Plan, because that has to do with our ground cover, and no one is addressing that. We're the plan only addresses greenhouse emissions and things like that, but it doesn't address global warming.
Thank you. One of the things you touched on a little bit in this discussion was economic growth in the county, jobs and that kind of thing. There's an economic study, as you know, that's been being done now by the county to look at these issues, and it looks like it focuses a lot on attracting biotech companies and high-tech companies. But small businesses, some people have criticized it, really not focusing on that. As you probably know, Poolesville is a very, its commercial sector is very reliant on small businesses. We do have a few larger firms here, but by and large, it's family-owned businesses, small businesses, people that are in rural areas that have farms and so forth. So what can be done to encourage more economic growth in an area like Poolesville, which is pretty distinct in that regard from other parts of the county in terms of small business? And we'll start this time with Dan and go that direction.
One just last thing on the climate change. I agreed with Will's point about mitigation. I think that's an important step in climate action. But my focus on economic growth is really the center of what's going to maintain Montgomery County in the future. The small business folks that I've talked to, for example, during COVID felt like the county had forgotten about them. The people I've said or talked with talk about rules that are imposed by the county. Small business in Kentlands, for example, that was on the second floor on Main Street, required to get a wheelchair accessible bathroom on the second floor when there was no elevator. Just rules like that that just don't seem to make sense. I think there's been a hostility to somewhat between the county government and the small business community, and even the large business community. We're losing out to the competitors in the district and to Fairfax and elsewhere. And I think we've got to rethink ourselves in terms of our economic competitiveness.
William?
Sure. So, small businesses are the lifeblood of communities like Poolesville, but they're the lifeblood of the county, and I think that it is encouraging now that the Economic Development Corporation is sort of up on its feet, taking the reins of our economic development thrust in the county, as well with the council and the county putting together the economic plan. It's the center and the focus of what we're doing. As we're coming out of COVID, it's going to be really critical, agree, and I'm sure you'll hear this from other folks, to make sure that we're making sure the businesses who struggled through COVID are made whole, that they're able to stay open, right, keep their doors open, figuring out how we continue to help support small business owners who are, sometimes great at coming up with, ideas for businesses, but need business training and supports, right? I'm part of a organization called the Black Collective that started up in the past couple years to help support women and Black-owned small businesses, but also to work with the council, with the county and the Economic Development Corporation to help them develop some new programs to be able to support those small business owners. So those are some of the things that I would want to do across the county and here in Poolesville.
Marilyn?
So throughout the pandemic, I worked with small businesses day and night to get the funding from the federal, state, and county to keep their doors open, to keep working families in their jobs. I run a Chamber of Commerce, and so and the vast majority of my members are businesses with 10 or less employees. So I've worked with thousands of businesses, small businesses, and I think that we need to provide training for entrepreneurs. We need to get funding for entrepreneurs. I just recently finished a grant program called Pathways Program, where we brought in women and minorities, and they went through a 3-month program, and we had 27 graduates of the program. They got training on everything from business plan, finding funding, marketing, getting leads, and that's what we need to do more and more of. And those programs should be funded everywhere. Entrepreneurs really need help. Thank you.
Lorna?
Oh, sorry. Well, I am one of those small businesses, and I can attest that all of that funding and relief for small businesses did not always trickle down to the small businesses. And there's still a lot of pain and hurt and effort to rebuild from the pandemic. I think what we need to do is be more intentional and strategic about how we support small businesses. We need to look at our small business incubator and just re-energize what it's there for. We have to have life cycle resources for our small businesses. We just can't help them get started and then leave them and say, okay, go on and go forth and do good things as a small business. We have to continue to nurture and provide the resources to them so that they can thrive. We also need to look at joining in some of the state programs that will allow some career and technical training so that those individuals straight out of high school can possibly become entrepreneurs, because small businesses drive our economy and are very much needed.
Thank you. As you know, you mentioned this already, Poolsville High School has a very high-performing academic program, but there's also a need in the county for people with high skills and in the trades. And one of the ideas that was, questions that was asked by an audience member was, if Montgomery County takes significant steps to provide education in skills and trades for the students, what would you envision that looking like, especially the role of Montgomery College in that process? And I think on this one, we'll start with Dan and go this way.
My son went through Montgomery College for 2 years and got his associate's degree, and we came away with really a profound respect for that institution. I think that's one of the things that makes Montgomery County special. I do believe, though, that there needs to be a recognition that that there's a wide range of choices for our young people, not just to have to go on to a white-collar job, but a completely respectable work in as a entrepreneur in the trades. I think is something that we ought to encourage, and I think Montgomery College, in conjunction with the Montgomery County Schools, is an obvious place to allow that to happen, and to recognize we need that balance in the county, and it starts really with, again, the economic growth idea and affordable housing that will allow people in the trades to live here where they work. So. I've got more to say on that. Thank you.
Sorry, should have done that before I turned the mic on. So I completely agree. I think Montgomery College is actually a national leader on this model of work, right? On how to figure out how to fill what's been called the skills gap, right? We know there are all these jobs out there across the country that take, a certification, some additional trade skill, and so Montgomery College has to continue to be a leader here in partnering with MCPS. I completely agree when I say continuum of education from pre-K to career. I mean, opening up all pathways, right? Not at four-year college is not for everybody, but a career that can sustain your family, that can, to Dan's point, help you afford some housing in a community like Montgomery County and be able to set yourself and your family up for the future is really important. And we've got to be getting to kids young, right? It's about giving kids options and pathways early so that they understand and appreciate the options before them. We don't want, and what we're doing right now, unfortunately, is losing some folks in that gap, where if four-year college is not for you, then maybe you will have had a mentor or someone to tell you about, a trade program. But the earlier we start in MCPS and the stronger we make those foundations with MCPS and Montgomery College, the better we can do at this trade education thing that we need to be doing.
Marilyn?
So the worker pipeline is critical to our economy, and right now we have a worker shortage, and we need to deal with that. So just like kids can get Montgomery College credits in high school, we need to do the same thing for certification programs. We need to build these programs at all high schools. Every high school is geared towards kids going to college, and we have a few high schools focused on vocational. If we assume that there are kids in every single high school who want to go to college, there are kids in every single high school that want to get a trades or certification program. So we need to be able to spread out those programs throughout the entire county. And we need to look at scholarship programs for certification programs. A lot of the federal scholarship programs, it has to be in a 2-year, 4-year school. We need to look at how we can get more funding for certification programs for our kids.
Lorna?
apology. I think we also need to eliminate, before we can start talking about what we do or what kind of services or programs we offer for four-year degree kids or those that go into the trade disciplines, we need to eliminate the stigma that there's something perhaps wrong or less than to enter into a trade field. When I was in school, they had what they called SHOP, and I didn't get to participate in it, but you know, it was there, and it was important, and it was critical, and it satisfied a need to develop our kids who aren't all going to college. So we need to bring some of that back, and we need to do more about creating the trade programs in the schools and creating the internships that allow the students to get involved in disciplines like education and mental health and agricultural science, because all of those are areas in our community where we have needs.
Thank you. It's interesting because Poolsville actually had a shop program relatively late compared to most of the rest of the county, and I actually have a piece of furniture built by the shop still at my today, so well built. And Lorna, we'll start with you this way, going that way, since we started with Dan and William and Marilyn. One of the big topics in this whole debate from the county lately has been transportation, primarily Route 270 and the American Legion Bridge and what to do with it. Poolsville, actually, the town itself, a lot of the people here are commuters, so obviously that is important to them. What is your stance on Route 270 and on the American Legion Bridge and what to do about it?
Regarding the American Legion Bridge, I think that it needs to be maintained. It's in terrible disrepair, and I think that that's the first thing that needs to happen with that. I'm not a proponent of highways or new highways. I am a proponent of taking our existing roads and maintaining them and building upon them and looking at the local road projects, which we can use to ease traffic congestion and also to ease the emissions that are contributing to our environment. So I don't remember the rest of your question. I'm sorry. So for transportation here in Poolsville, I would look at, I tried to drive in parts of Poolsville, and there's no area on the side of the road where you can walk safely. There are no bike paths of any real consequence, and those are the types of areas that I think are more appropriate for this community versus some other areas of the county.
Marilyn?
So yeah, I work in transportation all the time in my day job. So one of the ways that we can help improve transportation is to get more jobs in the up county. So for every job in Germantown, it's one less car at the spur. So that's the first thing that we need to do. I support the expansion of the American Legion Bridge. I support increased capacity on I-270. However, that capacity needs to go from 370 north. I was not in favor of 370 south, but 370 north, we need to improve the 270. Mark two-way, we need to do that. And there are several master planned roads from Clarksburg south that we need to do. A bus rapid transit, I'm certainly in favor of bus rapid transit on throughout the up county with designated lanes. Pedestrian safety, we need to look at sidewalks. There's a 5-year delay on sidewalks. I find that unconscionable. Thank you.
William?
Sure. So we definitely need capacity on 270, right? We know that our traffic is bidirectional, sort of going down to DC in the morning, coming up in the evening. And so I've been in favor, as a lot of people on the council have been, of reversible toll lanes. That is not what the governor's plan is. I think that we do need to fix the bottleneck, so I'm all in agreement of expanding the bridge. I'm in agreement of expanding 270 above me in Clarksburg, where we're coming up your way and going out to, excuse me, to Frederick. Certainly think that we need to be looking at our ride-on system. Been a while since we reevaluated our routes. We talked about that a little bit for the bus here in Poolsville. I'm certainly a supporter of BRT. I do think that we do need to take a look at our master plan roads, the state roads that go through the up county. We got to work with our delegation to get some more permission from the state to get some capacity improvements on state roads. And there are master plan roads that we got to look at, but we got to do them in a multimodal way so that they work for drivers, bike riders, pedestrians as well.
Dan, and the next question, Marilyn, will go from you that direction, so.
Well, transportation is something that's been a part of my life. I think I calculated out that I've lived almost a year of my life on the George Washington Parkway, just downstream from the Legion Bridge. I was here for the last reconstruction of the bridge. I support the continued use of the bridge in terms of the expansion. I am not real comfortable with the data that I see that helps me understand the commuter data that's going to help us understand where we actually need to put our money. I see a real problem that runs on 270, starting from the Dulles Access Road all the way up 270. I tell you the story of our dental technician that lives in Hagerstown and commutes down every morning, down 270 from Hagerstown down to Germantown. I don't think we really understand the choices that commuters make in terms of time and the cost and the pollution. And I think that really needs to be worked out better.
Thank you. One of the other things that's been a big issue in the county in the last few years in the debates has to do with regulation and how it affects businesses. We've had a recent example here in Poolesville where a local business was trying to open, and I can tell you they went through a lot of regulation and time to get permits and all kinds of things. It took them a long time. Do you think the business regulation is a part of the problem with our economic growth in the county? And we'll start with Marilyn.
Yes. No.
What would you do about it?
Right. So this has been an issue for a very long time, right? And something that I work on at the chamber quite a bit. So I've personally been involved in at least 3 real great efforts from the county executive to revamp the permitting process, and it sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The problem is that the county executive, the county council all believe that permitting has to change, but nothing ever does. And there has to be accountability. So, and it has to be at the inspection level. If an inspector does something wrong, they need to pay for the remediation of that. And so there has to be a cultural change to a culture of yes. When a business owner goes to the county for help, the county needs to say, yes, let's work it out, let's see how we can do it, and that's not happening right now.
William?
Sure. So, I agree as well, and I know that, permitting services has made some moves forward. There's some more work to go there. In the conversations, a couple conversations that we had actually with them on the Up County Citizens Advisory Board, we found out that the county is also not really tracking our metrics versus our competitors. So, they're tracking closer to Prince George's, but less so on the Virginia side, both in terms of the timeline and window for, what it takes to get permits through. And we all understand those are dollars. That time is money, right? Those are economic impacts. And there are reasons that people decide to set up shop other places and close down shop and move them. So I definitely think, working through those processes with permitting services, I would agree there. And I think certainly having the Economic Development Corporation up and running, and again, sort of at the center of our economic conversation in the county is beneficial, right? To have folks who are helping to bring everything streamlined. And the only other thing I'd say is, I think that everything does not need more regulation, and the council has to be comfortable with not having the regulation pen as their first mode of attack.
Dan?
I think when I've talked about Montgomery County falling behind the rest of the region, I think we need to recognize that we're in a regional regulatory environment, that the choices, for example, Clark Construction just recently moving out of Bethesda to Tyson, the rise of the district over the last 15 years has been ultimately hurt the county in terms of our position. We've seen businesses choosing other jurisdictions over putting their jobs here. And I think we have to recognize that we're in a regional competitive environment. You in small business would recognize that kind of dynamic, and I think we can't just regulate in isolation. We have to recognize it's a regional market that business is competing in.
Lorna?
What I don't understand is with many of the issues that we've discussed this evening, why we keep having the same conversation. It's intentional. If things don't get done, if things don't happen, it's on purpose. Because by now, we know that there's an issue and we know that there needs to be some kind of resolution. I started Leadership Montgomery in 2011, and we were talking about the differences between the opportunities in Maryland and Virginia. And here we are, 11 years later, and we're still having these conversations. It's intentional. We need to look at the bottlenecks that cause people, those who might want to open businesses, not to open those businesses, the bottlenecks that add costs to them, the bottlenecks that add time to them, which ultimately ends up costing them more to try to do their business and open their business here. And then they walk away. I've talked to many business owners that say it's just not worth it. I will go to Virginia and do what I need to do. So we need to just help our business owners so that they can understand and navigate this process.
So we'll start from Dan going this way. There's a question from the audience, again, a little tough one, but it's a good one. Your first day in office, what is your first project, the first thing you're going to focus on that first day?
Well, first thing is, elected to District 2, you're one of 11 votes, and there has to be coalition building and collaboration and a sense of comedy in the county council that will ultimately allow us to have the equity around the county and to build for the general welfare of the whole county. My first day in office would be to basically get to know my colleagues and to learn how to work with them and let them understand where I'm coming from and the approach, the things that I'm looking for to build, recognizing that I'm just one vote of 11. So,
William?
Good answer, Dan. So, I think likewise, first day in office, I'm inviting one of our 11 colleagues up to have breakfast with me at my house in Clarksburg, and we're going to commute to Rockville together. We'll figure out if we're going to do it on 270 or if we're going to go down 355 so that they can see what we have to deal with up county, right? And I think, it's sort of, I was joking with somebody that I'm going to call it breakfast diplomacy, right? But it's part of the problem on the county council, and all of us have spoken to it in some regard, is that people who don't live up county but are making decisions that impact up county just don't get how we live up here, whether you're in Clarksburg, Poolesville, Bealsville, et cetera, right? And so I think I've got to go down that line, to similar to Dan's point, to build the coalitions to be able to say when we're talking about the CIP and keeping Poolesville High School up and keeping the renovation on track is in there, right? Or when we're talking about building the master plan roads that Clarksburg needs, when we're talking about these things that we need in Western Montgomery, so that these are not just things on a page to them, but that they know them, and hopefully they can say, "Oh yeah, Will took me by there." So that's what I would want to do my first day.
Marilyn?
Yeah, I think building coalitions is the key. I was wondering if that was comedy with a T or comedy with a D, but I think that both would work, right? The council works under a committee structure, so I think one of the first things that one needs to do is look at what their committees are, what their committee structures are, and with 11 council members, the math doesn't work quite the same. So there's going to be another upheaval as to how the committees structure, and there will be a big transition. At least five council members will be brand new. We are all not going to fit on the same floor. We're going to be on different floors. That's going to be new. And so I think that there's going to be a period of transition, and I've worked with coalitions and partnerships my entire professional life. And so I think that I will work on coming up with how we're going to move together in a body.
Lorna?
Well, I think the common theme is coalition building, relationship building. When my pastor first came to preach his first sermon, he said that he needed to read the sheep before he could feed the sheep. And I'm not suggesting anyone is sheep, but, the analogy is you really need to understand what's going on before you can come in and start changing the world. Like you're not in this area by yourself, as has been stated. There will be 11 council members, and so you need to understand what some of the pain points are on some of the other council members, because hopefully, collaboratively, you all will be able to make decisions that won't just impact one area of the county, but will impact the whole county, so that we can all rise up and thrive together. So that is what I would do. I would figure out how to fit into the committee structure, and then I would try to understand what matters, what the pain points are for some of my fellow council members.
So we've got about another 12 or 13 minutes. There's one more question from the audience, and then at the end, if you each want to take 2 minutes to kind of summarize your key thoughts for the evening, what your perspective is when you become a new county council member, and what you want to accomplish. So this question has to do with housing. One of the issues that's come up repeatedly in Poolesville over the years has been not so much housing, but specifically seniors housing for older people. Both affordability and availability, especially houses that are built on one level, things like that. Have you got any specific ideas on that issue, on how to tackle that? And Marilyn, we'll start with you and then go to your left.
Sure. So we're in a housing crisis. We have an issue of housing. We have a housing shortage. We also have a housing affordability issue. And I think that one of the issues from an affordability issue is we need to make sure that not only our children can afford to buy houses when they're ready to settle down, but that our parents can stay in their homes. And so we need to look at we need to look at housing of all different price points. We certainly need to look at community housing around communities. I think that there are a lot of really interesting new ways that communities develop, especially older adults, older seniors, that come together with much smaller units, but in a larger community with larger amenities. And so I'm really looking at that, ways of how we can create those pods in different areas of the county. Thank you.
William?
Sure. So, I've been working on affordable housing issues for my whole career. As I mentioned, I'm the chair of the board of an organization called the Renters Alliance that works on affordable housing policy. We work both on helping the issue of young people not being able to find rental housing, but also seniors, right, who are being priced out of affordable rentals as they're trying to downsize. And so I think we've got to focus on having both affordable senior living on the rental level, as well as helping people age in place in their homes. And these are things that have to be baked into our planning. Our population is aging thanks to modern medicine. That's great. But we've got to make sure that we are providing the necessary thought process through the planning process on the planning commission and at the county council to make sure, and working with, developers and the folks who build housing, nonprofit housing, et cetera, to provide more space for our seniors. The other thing is that comes along with that, we've got to look at the transportation issues, pedestrian safety, making sure that we are putting housing, co-locating it, in proximity to transit as much as possible, and making sure that we're making pedestrian ways safer as we're figuring out where to put housing.
Dan?
Is the question about senior housing or all housing in general?
But mainly in our area, it's mostly been focused on that, on housing for older people.
Well, I think the projects all start with someone recognizing there's an opportunity. And I think that to not recognize that, to not build the incentives for more housing of whatever type may be needed, I think we have to recognize that expressing a desire for more housing won't get it done, that ultimately it comes from people making decisions about the way that they want to invest their money to develop, and we have to recognize that. I think that we've looked past that way too much. For example, even We've hurt ourselves in our rental housing market by limiting the increases that can be added to rental property. That doesn't necessarily mean that those costs have to be absorbed by the renters themselves, but to basically restrict the return is to ultimately suppress rental properties and all kind of development.
Lorna?
Senior housing is so critically important, and it's something that I think once you get to become a senior, no one really thinks that it's an issue until it is. And I think that, as Will said, it needs to be in the plan. How do we forecast that we forecast the number of schools we need to build based on the number of children we think folk are going to have. So why wouldn't we also be forecasting the number of senior facilities that we think we need in our various communities based on the population that's there? We have to do a better job of that. And then it all comes down to money too. How are you going to pay for it? We need to look at perhaps multi-year revenue-backed bonds. We need to look at private-public partnerships. We need to be intentionally thinking about how to help with the housing crisis, especially as it pertains to older folks who are more vulnerable as they get older. And they still want to thrive and live their lives in very rewarding ways.
Well, we got about 5 minutes till 7:30. You've done a great job, I think. And the questions from the audience, I'm glad they were here because the ones I read out, many of them were not as tough as the ones I asked you that came from them. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So let's have 2 more minutes, each of you. You each have 2 minutes, starting with Dan, to just give us your sense of what you think the key challenges are for the county and our area and why you think you're the best person to address them.
I don't think it's a surprise to tell you that Montgomery County, all the data suggests that we're losing out. We're losing our competitive edge, and that we need to go back to the basics, recognizing that the underlying engine that allows Montgomery County government to provide the services to the people is ultimately coming from the economic base. And when we're losing significant jobs to other constituencies, it actually suggests that we're in a serious issue that has to be addressed, and that other priorities have to at least be weighted against this particularly fundamental issue. I believe I've got the understanding of at least a regional economic issue that is fundamental behind Montgomery County's growth in the next 20, 30 years, and I think I can help with that. I just look forward to, even after we're, whatever's in the election, I look forward to working with all of the other community leaders here at the table, and I think that ultimately reason and discussion and conversation can solve a lot of our problems. And I look forward to being a new voice, perhaps a new set of ideas contributed to the county council.
William?
Sure. So I really appreciate the questions tonight and the conversation with you all. I think that a lot of what we covered in this discussion are the important issues in front of the Up County, the Western County, the whole county. And I hope that you've heard from my various experiences, from my background, the fact that I've had a front row seat to see what kind of leadership we need by working on these issues in the community, working on these issues in Congress and the like. And, I think that, unfortunately, as has been said before in this discussion, we have been having the same conversations for 20 years about the same issues. And I think both we need new leadership, a new voice to be able to lead us forward, who can build those new coalitions, who can work on these issues and look at them through a different prism, but who can understand the dynamics of a new Up County. Because one of the things we haven't talked about is that the Up County has changed a lot, in the last couple of decades. We are the fastest growing, most diverse region of the county. And that impacts how we are looked at in Rockville or not, in addition to the way that they don't understand, how we live in our various communities up here. And so I think that I'm bringing the experience to the table, the energy to the table that we need on this next council to be able to move us forward. And I'm going to be a leader that's going to be able to listen first. That's a key quality of leadership that we don't always have around here. Listen first, build coalitions, and then be able to lead us forward and make some real impacts and improvements here in the Up County. So, I really appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you all talking about issues that impact you all here, but the connections to those issues that impact us across the entire Up County. And again, offering you my leadership and experience and service in the community to continue to help move us forward. So hope to be able to have your vote on July 19th.
Thank you. Marilyn?
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for coming and for your very, very good questions. From the very beginning of my campaign, I assumed that redistricting Poolesville would be redistricted to District 2. It was the only sense that made sense. And I came out to Poolesville. I've been in Poolesville for probably the last 6-9 months or so, reaching out to community leaders. We've started knocking on doors in Poolesville to hear what you have to say, to hear what your issues are. I've been in the Up County for a long time. And Poolesville is in my backyard, and I treat it with the respect that you deserve. We talked about the issues that I think are important to Poolesville, certainly Whites Ferry, healthcare, fair access. We need to do something about both of those very important issues. Countywide, Montgomery County is at a crossroads. We need to get our economy back on track. We need to get our schools back on track. My key issues: jobs, housing, transportation, education, environment. They're all complicated issues. They're all interrelated. Just because they're hard doesn't mean that we can't do it. So I think we need to look at that. From a jobs perspective, job growth has been lagging for the past 15 years. It's not just the pandemic. And plain and simple, we need jobs. There's a perception that Montgomery County is bad for business. We need to change that perspective. We need to change that reality. From a housing perspective, I just talked about that. We need to make sure that our first responders, our healthcare workers, our teachers can live in the same community that they work in. We need to do something about that. And we need strong leadership to decide we're going to increase housing. That has to happen. The next council will decide where those houses are going to go, when, and how they're going to be developed, and that's an important aspect. Of course, I mentioned I-270 transportation. Not only is it a quality of life issue, but it's an economic imperative. So you all know me. Most of you know me. You know my track record, and I would love to have your vote on July 19th. Thank you.
Lorna?
Well, I started off the conversation talking about my best assessment, my BEST, that highlights my extensive business background. It highlights my solid and applicable education. It highlights my proven advocacy and leadership skills. I'm the past president of the Montgomery County Commission for Women, the past vice president of the Montgomery County Women's Democratic Club. I currently serve on the Manor Food Center Board and am their past advocacy chair. So I understand issues. I understand getting my hands dirty and being in the trenches with individuals to understand what their pain points are and what the disparities are. But outside of all of that, I care. I genuinely care. And from the way I see it, the reason we are where we are today is because someone didn't care enough. And that is not what you would have with me. I'm not a politician. I'm not beholden to any particular special interests. But I have listened to the community and I have delivered for over 30 years. And that's the experience that you would get from me. That's what you need. Not someone who promises to do something or just outlines what needs to be done, but someone who has found a way to address solutions and bring results. I am a fresh and experienced voice, and I ask for your vote. You can count on me to listen, and you can count on me to address the issues that are important to you, regardless of whether they are important to someone else. Because as I said earlier, equity is very, very important to me, and I think everyone deserves the right to thrive, and to thrive well based on their particular environment. And you can count on me to be a voice to ask those difficult questions on the county council when it looks like folks are going to be overlooked. That won't happen with me.
Thank you, and thank you all the citizens for coming tonight. Just one final point I want to make sure that all the candidates know, and all of you, and probably all of you know this, but just to repeat it, the fact is, we now have 11 members of the council, not just 9. So in the past, it was hard to get our fair share and our voice heard in the council. And even though we have some good candidates here, it's still going to be hard, and probably even harder, because now we'll need, instead of just 5 votes and a majority, we're going to need more than that, 6 at least. And it's going to be a tough road, so we need to keep our voices out there. All of you coming tonight is a good, really good start. And the questions you asked, like I said, they were a lot tougher than mine, and I'm glad you guys had them. So thank you for coming, and thank all of you for coming too.